time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
It was a good camp. I feel like we got better. We're developing a lot of young guys to complement the guys that we have returning, and I've been pleased with the progress.
We're still going to work through kind of the rotation of things we need to do, but whoever's got the hot hand is going to carry us. And but all three guys deserve to play. All three guys deserve to start, to be honest with you.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome back into Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network here on a Thursday night. Good to have you with us. We are in 5 Points in Columbia. We are at Steve Tannehill's Group Therapy. Now, this is a place where Gamecock fans often come to, students and otherwise, in particular, to celebrate Gamecock victories. But after a loss, this is where they come to drown their sorrows. They come get some group therapy. This place has been here since like 1978. And, of course, Steve Tannehill made his name as a Gamecock quarterback great, went on to an outstanding high school coaching career in the state of South Carolina, then stepped aside from Union County a couple of seasons ago, came back to Columbia, bought group therapy, and now it is a cool place to be. And we are here because we've got Steve Tannehill and we've got Coach Chuck Reedy. So tonight we'll have our quarterback and our coach together to talk about the beginning of the season, to break down USC and Clemson, and talk about other issues related to the college football campaign. Also, a special guest here tonight, Patrick Davis, big Gamecock fan, well-known country music songwriter and performer. He is here, and he's going to drop by and visit with us as well.
We're going to have to keep Patrick in between Steve and Chuck when they do their segment, the coach and the QB, later on today, because there might be some contention between those two.
Oh, do you think?
A little bit.
They like each other.
I'm sure they do.
They
but,
like each other.
But as we saw last night with the M&M boys, things.
That's totally different.
Things start getting a little bit hot when we're talking Clemson and USC, especially less than 48 hours to game time now.
That is totally different. Professor Tom Hayes back at our studios in downtown Columbia. We have got a loaded up show for you tonight. Now, should you lose us for whatever reason, I know there's a lot of high school football tonight, some other things going on. Remember to stay with us on our website, SportsTalkSC.com. You can listen to us via our YouTube stream on the website. And also, of course, our stations are streaming via the TuneIn app. Our Columbia affiliate, The Point Radio, never cuts away from us, so you can find us there if you can't find us somewhere else. No reason not to be with us tonight. Tony Haynes, who does the sidelines for the NC State football team, he's going to join us here in just a couple of minutes. We'll get his take on the Wolfpack. Mike Morgan on the move a little bit after 7 o'clock. Ty Linder, who is the play-by-play voice for Kent State, will be with us at 7:20 to give us the last word on the Golden Flashes, plus more from Will Muschamp and more from Clemson.
I want to start asking this, and, of course, the phone number, 800-956-7266. Where from when you started looking at this USC-NC State game to now, as we sit here less than 2 days ahead, were you more optimistic at the beginning, or are you more optimistic now, less optimistic then, less optimistic now? How has your optimism either waxed or waned over the course of the time once we knew this matchup, once we knew everything we knew out of spring, once we knew kind of what the question marks were going in and coming out of the fall? My optimism has waned personally because I probably didn't take NC State as seriously as many have done, and hearing all the chatter that has kind of come towards them and followed them. People are thinking that they're a playoff contender or an ACC contender. I don't necessarily think of them that highly, but I do think that they should be the favorite, and they are in the betting slip, and I'm leaning toward picking them to win on Saturday.
You're talking about whether they're a 5-point favorite, so you're going to lay the points. I feel good picking South Carolina with the points, and you know what? I feel good right now. I feel good about picking South Carolina straight up. I think you've got to give the Gamecocks a little bit of respect here. I hear what you say about NC State, and duly noted. They've got a terrific defensive front. They've got a good quarterback. They got some weapons. But I think you also have to consider the improvement in the South Carolina football team. And I think maybe Jake Bentley could be the real X factor here. I got to believe, if the Gamecocks are going to win this football game, they're going to do it through the air. And I think they've got the talent to win an aerial attack here against NC State.
You know, the interesting thing about it is a lot of times when people talk about a defense and what they're strong at doing, it's because maybe they're weak at some other part of their defense. For instance, a lot of people are picking NC State because they say, boy, they got a stout front four. They can rush the passer, and they can stop the run. They gave up only about 3.2 yards a carry last year. But then again, a lot of times they gave up minuscule yardage on the ground because everybody was burning them through the air. So, you know, sometimes those things are quite interesting when you look at the stats. But I think, Corn, this is a game where South Carolina, if they throw well early in the football game, they can set up the run late. And that's why I believe in getting a lead, working that lead, and really turn loose this offensive line that has something to prove.
I agree that the offensive line has something to prove. And I will take what both of you have said, and I will say this. Because again, a lot of this is we're dealing a lot off of the talk and the talk and the optimism that emanates from Will Muschamp and Eric Wolford and everybody who's associated with both of the programs that we cover, at least in the FBS level with Clemson and USC. But I parse through the talk, and you can't believe everything you hear until you see it with your own two eyes. I have to see whether or not this offensive line can dominate the line of scrimmage against a very quality defensive line. And I also have to see that the depth concerns on defense are just concerns because we haven't seen the guys who are the backups and the newcomers. We haven't seen them play on Saturday yet. That's my only those are my concerns. If those concerns are quelled by the time we're done on Saturday, then I'll have a completely different outlook on this USC team. And I have a pretty positive outlook. You and I both have them for about 8 wins this year. But I just don't know until we see it whether or not we're going to be able to see a victory on Saturday with NC State.
Well, that is what opening Saturday is all about in college football. There are no preseason games.
Right.
You can't answer questions by playing another team leading up to your season opener. You have to answer questions in that season opener, and that's why it's so intriguing, these opening games, just like with Clemson and Kent State. Now, I think the Tigers will cover the spread against Kent State. I think when we do our picks tomorrow night, I will take Clemson. I think I'll lay the 39.5 because I think Clemson wants to put on a big offensive show,
make a statement,
get Kelly Bryant some good-looking numbers, build up his confidence, and even get Hunter Johnson in there and let him do some of the same. So I don't think there'll be any taking the foot off the gas when they get ahead of Kent State on Saturday. But again, the question is with Clemson, how good is the quarterback play going to be? And you talk about wanting to wait and see. Well, you'll be there in person. I'll be in Charlotte, but I'll see him against Auburn the next week. I've got to see before I can absolutely have a complete feel of confidence for this Clemson team. And there's some people who believe, and I really can't believe it. I saw one of the guys from CBSSports.com, maybe a guy from ESPN as well, pick Clemson to make the playoffs.
Get out.
And so I'm thinking to myself,
you have beaten
do
Florida
you not
State.
Understand? Well, not just that. Do you not understand the role of the quarterback
in
making it to having a great year and making it to the playoffs? Now, maybe Kelly Bryant is going to be that guy. And if not, if he stumbles early but not to the point where he hurts them and they go with Hunter Johnson and he becomes that guy, then maybe so because they do have a good enough defense and they do have enough talent on offense. If the quarterback play is good, to be right there.
The most important thing I heard was from Dabo Swinney, who said that this battle's not over by any stretch. Yes, Kelly Bryant is the starter this week, and he's the starter for the game against Kent State, more than likely the starter against Auburn unless something crazy happens on Saturday. But in my mind, this is still Hunter Johnson and Zarek Cooper's job to try and go out there and win by the end of the year.
All right, 800-956-7266. We'll take some calls from you later in the show. When we come back, though, Tony Haynes of the Wolfpack Radio Network will join us, and we'll find out more from his standpoint about NC State looking ahead to the Gamecocks coming up. Okay, Sports Talk, Thursday night edition from Group Therapy in the 5 Point section of downtown Columbia. Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic here, and the Professor Tom Hayes.
You can't be deeper in the Columbia, the 5 Points area than we are right now. We are central.
Embedded.
Absolutely.
Embedded.
It's not a bad place to be embedded either.
No, it is not. It is not. Glad you're with us. Hope you're having a great day. A lot of rain around the area. A lot of high school football games have been rescheduled. Had 3 games played last night. Got a bunch of games being played tonight around the state, or scheduled to be played around the state tonight. And I guess some games will be left to be played, hopefully, tomorrow night. Hopefully we'll have some scores for you on our scoreboard tomorrow night, including that big game, Dutch Fork and Fort Dorchester, scheduled for tomorrow night. A couple of things to pass along to you and things we'll be talking about, as in a little bit we'll have Coach Chuck Reedy and the quarterback Steve Tannehill here in person as we commence another year of the coach and the quarterback. And they'll be with us in a little bit. And then Patrick Davis, for you Gamecock fans, he'll be appearing in Charlotte tomorrow night. And we'll hear from Patrick here live at Group Therapy, and he can tell you more about that. But right now, let's welcome in a good friend of ours, longtime buddy with the NC State Wolfpack Radio Network, Tony Haynes. You'll see him on the sideline roaming up and down, covering the Wolfpack. He also does the television shows for the Wolfpack, and he joins us now.
Great. Group Therapy, man. I joined you just in time.
I know. This is for everybody. For NC State people and Gamecock people, we got all kind of group therapy love for you.
Yeah. You can never have too much therapy, you know.
For sure. So, should people in the garnet and black be fearful of the people in the red and white on Saturday?
Well, I'm not going to issue any warnings. I would never do that. But one thing I know for sure, this is certainly Dave Doran's most experienced team, and it should be his best team. And they have a lot of returning starters. They have a lot of know-how, guys who know what they're doing. They played in some big games, but at times they played very well in some big games. And the big thing is, of course, they return a lot of players who play key positions, including quarterback and receiver and defensive line, offensive line. And so, I think this is NC State's best chance to have a really strong team and put together a terrific season in Dave Doran's 5 years, or at the very least go to whatever that next level is. They've played in bowl games, played in a bowl game and won it last year, but their best chance maybe to improve upon what they've done here the previous 4 years.
One of the big players, of course, on the offensive side of the football is Jalen Samuels, as you know, and a lot of people are wondering just the specific ways that NC State plans on using him as he enters in his senior season. What does he do best, and how do they utilize him?
Well, he's certainly perhaps the most unique player in the history of NC State football. He's perhaps the most versatile player we've had here, and maybe one of the most versatile players in college football. I'm not sure there's a guy quite like him. They list him at the H-back, but he plays all over the place on offense. I guess the best way you could characterize Jalen Samuels physically is he's got a fullback body, he's got a tailback seat, and he's got a wide receiver's hand. And you put all of those things together, he has a very unusual skill set, especially for someone of his particular build. And so you're going to see them line up all over the place. He may line up the tailback. He may line up the traditional fullback spot, tight end. He'll split out with the wide receivers. He moves around and shifts and motions. And what they're just trying to do is get him in favorable matchup situations because, again, he can run pass routes like a receiver. He can catch the ball like a receiver. He's not really built like a receiver. He's physically strong enough to run through tackles. He's also elusive enough to get around people with his quick feet. So he's a different type of guy, that's for sure.
Talking with Tony Haynes with the NC State Radio Network. We hear so much about the Wolfpack defensive front, and justifiably so. And I guess a key in this game is whether or not they can get a four-man rush on Jake Bentley. Is that what they will depend on? Do you think they go into this game, maybe every game, thinking and expecting that they can put pressure on a quarterback with a four-man rush?
Yeah, but I think everything with them first starts with stopping the run. last year they did a really nice job in that area. They gave up only 109 yards rushing per game. And then, you kind of get teams off schedule a little bit. You put them in second and long and third and long situations, and then that's when they can really turn it loose with their pass rush. Now, I don't know how South Carolina is going to approach this game in terms of its run-pass balance. But, for NC State last year, as good as they were getting after quarterbacks, they had 37 sacks as a team, but it all started with their ability to shut down the opponent's running game. They kind of did a good job of making, for the most part, opposing offenses one-dimensional, which makes it a little bit easier to play defense, as you know. So that's where it starts with them, I think, the ability to shut down the run, and then you put yourself in situations where you can get after the quarterback a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Tony, the interesting thing about NC State is they've been ever so close, the missed field goal notwithstanding, against Clemson, Florida State, and Louisville, the top three in your division. In your opinion, why have they not been able to at least close the deal in one of those close ball games?
Well, I mean, you look at the Florida State and the Clemson game. I mean, you saw the Clemson game. You go to Death Valley and you run the clock all the way down. You put yourself in a position to win the game with a 33-yard field goal. I think just about any coach in the country would take that opportunity. If you tell any coach, hey, you have a chance to win this game on the last play with a 33-yard field goal, you can't ask for more than that. But you still got to make the kick. They didn't make the kick, and so you left the door open for Clemson. They're the national champions, as we now know, so you can't leave the door open. You can't give them a second chance to win the game. Otherwise, they're gonna do what they did, and they're gonna finish the job. The Florida State game, same thing. It really came down to one play, and the State pretty much outplayed Florida State for 4 quarters. Seminoles were driving late in the game. They threw a ball that should have been intercepted. State safety Sean Boone was standing in the middle of the end zone. The ball came right to him. He just cold cocked and he just dropped it. And that gave Florida State an extra opportunity. So when you're playing really good teams, you can't leave that door cracked open, and that's kind of what State did in those two ball games. Last year, the Louisville game came right after the Clemson game, and State certainly had not recovered from that game. That was a devastating defeat down in Death Valley, and the Wolfpack just mentally wasn't ready to play when they went up to Louisville last year, and they were on the lopsided end of a blowout. But this year, with the team they have, maybe the good news is if you've got to play Louisville, Clemson, Florida State, which they do because they're in that division, at least 2 of those 3 games will be here in Raleigh. The Clemson and the Louisville games will be in Raleigh.
As far as the secondary goes, Tony, how equipped do you believe that they are in trying to handle the depth of receivers and tight ends that South Carolina has to offer?
Well, I certainly say that'll be the big concern defensively. I mean, obviously South Carolina has a bevy of talented players that pass catchers and guys that can make plays after they catch it. Tight end's good. I know Deebo Samuel is highly thought of and kind of a big play machine. You got to find a way to get him on the ground in space. And State did a good job avoiding injuries in the preseason, but they did lose one key guy, and that was Mike Stevens in the secondary. He's a cornerback. He's played a lot of football. He was a senior. He was injured in training camp. They expect to get him back in the near future, but he's not going to be out there on Saturday. So one of the corners will be Jonathan Austin, who is a converted receiver. Austin didn't even play last year because of an injury. Before that, 2 years ago, he's a receiver. They converted him to corner. The other corner, Nick McLeod, is a sophomore. He played some late last year. He's a guy with a bright future, but again, he's not been out there for a lot of snaps. So I'm sure South Carolina's kind of looking at that. They're trying to dissect the potential weaknesses of NC State, and they may look at those 2 particular spots as cornerback maybe something they can exploit. And we'll just find out on Saturday.
Hey, Tony, thank you, my friend. Good talking to you once again. Look forward to seeing you Saturday.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tony Haynes from the Wolfpack Radio Network here on Sports Talk. We're coming back with the coach and the quarterback. Welcome back, everybody. It's Sports Talk here on a Thursday night heading into a huge, huge weekend. We got so much with football and the race and the Yankees and the Red Sox.
Oh, stop it.
High school football.
You guys haven't quit yet on the
I never
Yankees?
give up on the Yankees.
Come on now.
Never give up. Panthers playing tonight. I wonder, they're playing tonight in Charlotte. We've got Chuck Reedy, Steve Tannehill, coach and quarterback with us. I'll throw it out to you guys. You know football fields. I mean, what kind of shape that field going to be in Saturday when South Carolina and NC State play? Especially, it's going to be a wet field tonight in Charlotte.
Look, those guys are professionals. They know how to take care of a field now.
So you have no doubt that
they got people who know more about grass than you know about anything, Corn.
They'll have that thing ready by Saturday afternoon.
Okay. Good to see you, too. Steve, how are you?
I'm great.
How's the business? How's group therapy?
Are we doing all right?
Are you helping people coming in with their miseries and they leave here with a smile, right?
We're always in therapy, I guess.
That's right.
It's going well. I can't complain. Had a good year.
Mm-hmm.
I got good people that work here, and that's it's just like coaching.
Yeah.
You know?
But you're enjoying yourself. That's
a lot more free time.
Yeah.
And I don't have some administrator that knows nothing about sports tell me anything to do. You know what I mean? That's the best. And I kind of set my own schedule. I've done a lot more this year than I have in the past 16 years. So,
well, you deserve it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, hey.
All right, let me ask Chuck. I want to get right to Clemson and opening up Saturday with Kent State's new era, Kelly Bryant or somebody. Yeah. Now, let me ask you about replacing a legend, as Clemson is having to do in Deshaun Watson. What is that like, and how do you make that transition successful?
Well, first of all, you don't replace Deshaun Watson. I mean, they talk about a once-in-a-generation. He's a once-in-a-lifetime guy, and they're not going to find another one like him. Obviously, Kelly Bryant has won the job. As I've said before on this show, if you've got three, you probably don't have one. And, they came out of spring. They were pretty much even. Obviously, they had to name a quarterback at some point. But, as Coach Sweeney said, all three of them, are pretty even. So, that tells me they're still not real settled, on who the quarterback's going to be. But, there's some big shoes to fill. But the one good thing about Clemson, they've got great talent all around those guys. So the quarterback doesn't have to be the guy that makes all the plays. He's just got to get them in the right situations, get the balls, or get the ball to the playmakers and let them make the plays.
Sure. Steve, what impresses you the most about Jake Bentley?
Well, he's a student of the game, and he's grown up with a quarterback coach as his dad. So the whole way through this thing, he's from probably 5 years old. He's been watching film the whole way. It's different, I coached against Bobby Bentley.
Mm-hmm.
His quarterbacks, whether it was his sons or another quarterback, they know what they're doing, And from what I hear, Jake is a film room guy.
Mm-hmm. Film rat, basically.
I mean, my dad used to say he's a gym rat. That's what we used to say. Now, I wasn't a gym rat.
Were you a film room rat?
No, I just went and played. I played the game. I wanted to play.
Well, how much better would you have been if you were a film room rat?
I got into the film when Coach Bussell came from Virginia Tech my junior year. I got into that mode, but I just wanted to play and compete. Whether it was practice was boring unless we did 7-on-7 or when we went team, and if they couldn't hit me, it really wasn't all that fun. I wanted to play.
Yeah.
But the football's changing a little bit, and a lot of bit. Obviously, I mean, 2 days is
it's gone
to what we know.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, even when I started coaching 16 years ago, 2 days was 2 days, almost 3 days.
Yep.
Now they can't practice but one. I mean, it's way different, Coach. Different than what we went through. But Jake is a smart guy. He's athletic. He doesn't really. You don't perceive that, but Jake can make some things happen. And I really think now they're young. Besides Hayden Hurst, I think that everyone's young around. And Debo Samuels isn't young, but I mean, but his talent is young. If the O-line can protect, he's going to be successful because he has a lot of talent. And I think he's a film studier and he's a coach's kid, and that helps. I mean, it does help. Connor Shaw was a coach's kid.
Coach, you have some concerns about this game with NC State, though.
Oh, I think that South Carolina has drawn a very, very tough opening game. NC State, finished last season very strong. They got 16 starters back. This is Coach Doran's 5th year. These are all his guys. They've all been in his system. Offensively, they've got, 4 starting offensive linemen back. Defensively, they've got, all 4 of their front guys back. And we all know up front is where it all starts. I think this is a game, if Carolina can win this football game, and I think it's going to be very tough for them to do that, I think they're on their way to winning 7 or 8 games.
Yep.
I really do, because I think this is that tough of a game for them. I think NC State, some people are picking them way up there. But I think they're going to be a factor, in the ACC. I mean, this is a team that had Clemson beat. Now, let's don't forget that at Death Valley. And you can say what you want to say, but there's a lot to be said for that now. And with all the guys they got coming back, I think it's a real tough challenge.
Coach and the quarterback with us here on Sports Talk, Chuck Reedy and Steve Tannehill. Of course, you were a legendary quarterback at South Carolina. You were.
I appreciate it.
All the records and everything else that you set. There's no question about that. And now I want you to look at Clemson and having to replace Deshaun Watson. And I mean, I could go back and look. I'm trying to remember who replaced you at South Carolina. Do you remember who followed you?
Anthony Wright.
Anthony Wright.
But he got hurt.
Yeah.
And
Anthony was a good quarterback.
Oh, yeah. And he was a 5-star coming in, and he played 9 years in the NFL.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So can you give Clemson fans a reason to believe that whoever steps in to replace Deshaun Watson can keep that offense clicking at a high level?
I agree with Coach. If there's 3 close, that means there's not one way above. I coached against Kelly Bryant. Kelly Bryant played at Abbeville first.
Yes.
And in 2011, Abbeville beat us. We were at Chesterfield. We knocked Kelly Bryant out the game, but he ended up playing one more year. Abbeville won a state championship, and then he went to Wren. And I saw Kelly Bryant. I was still coaching then. Kelly Bryant's got a lot of talent. Don't get me wrong, and I'm not talking about it. He's not Deshaun Watson. There's no one that they're going to get for 10 or 15 years that's Deshaun Watson.
Well, they think they got a kid coming in 2018 is pretty good.
Well, so does everybody. And so does
USC. They feel the same way about their kid, too.
Well, I mean, I think Jake Becklin's good, and I think the kid that's committed from Fort D's is great.
Yeah.
But they haven't played a snap.
Right. You don't know what you don't know until you know it.
Right. I mean, you just don't know. I mean, they have to prove it on the field. Deshaun Watson is a different cat. He was from the day he got on campus, and he won them games.
Yes.
Florida State, Alabama. Without him, they don't win either game. Now, some guys made some plays.
Mm-hmm.
7 was good. Obviously, he was first-round pick.
Yeah.
The tight end made some great. But it's the quarterback making those. That person's gone. And I'd say this about Clemson. They're going to miss Bulwer.
Mm-hmm.
And, Coach, you know this. Yeah. The leaders are the leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I think Carolina might be a little bit better than we think on defense, because Sky Moore's a leader.
True.
Now, he can't protect everybody. Excuse me, but a leader's a leader. Is Kelly Bryant going to lead that team like Deshaun? It's not going to happen. He hasn't produced where everyone buys in. Is Sky Moore going to lead our defense? Yes, because he is proven. So it's just 2 different big things. The leadership is giant.
Chuck, do you think Clemson's offense changes with Kelly Bryant in there? Do they do something to fit more of his skills, or do they stick with what they've been doing?
Well, I think they have to stick with what they've been doing. As we all read, Dabo said they've got 9 receivers that are going to play in the NFL. Well, you better find a way to get the ball to them.
Yeah.
And so, my take on this is, as it plays out, it'll be the quarterback. The one of those 3 that can throw the ball and get the ball to the receivers will be the guy that ends up being the quarterback. Kelly Bryant, Hunter Johnson, Cooper, whoever it may be.
All right, hang on, guys. We'll come back with more with the coach and the quarterback live from Group Therapy here in 5 Points. Back in a moment. Back on Sports Talk from Group Therapy in 5 Points in Columbia. We got the coach and the quarterback, Chuck Reedy, and Steve Tannehill. I got to ask you this because,
Their talk was almost better in the break than it was on the air.
Oh, absolutely. That's always the best stuff. What'd you think of Dabo's new contract? A little over $6 million a year. Clemson, you were at Clemson. Yeah. You were a top assistant. You were a head coach at Baylor. I mean, that's going back quite a few years. But it's good money for Clemson, making the number 3 highest paid coach in the country.
You know what? The market dictates it, and it dictated that he be paid at that level. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I think it was a smart move on Clemson's part to put him up there. I mean, you got to give the guy credit, what he's done, and he needs to be paid for it.
He's earned it.
Yep.
He's earned it.
Yep.
Admit, both of you, I'm going to ask both, admit it now. When he started, going back 8 years ago, did you foresee this kind of success under his leadership?
No. And the one thing that, the guy had never been a coordinator, he'd never been in charge of anything. But he's got a great personality. He relates to people very well. He's a great motivator and all those things. The thing he did after about 2 or 3 years, because he struggled early, he made some decision. He went out and hired people. He hired Chad Morris. He hired Brent Venables. He went out and hired some great assistant coaches and let them coach and got out of the way. And he does all the other stuff. And they're paying him.
And they paid him
exactly
well.
right. Yeah. And, so give him all the credit in the world for realizing what he needed to do, and he went out and did it.
Well, would you still be scared if Saban retires, Bama comes to call
him? They're going to come calling, but, I mean, I think Clemson locked him down.
He'd be foolish to do
that.
Yeah.
Why would you go over there and follow Saban?
Yeah. You can do everything that you want to do. Now, let me ask you, Steve, Muschamp. I mean, I happen to think that he is the perfect fit for South Carolina. I think he approaches the job correctly. I think he's a player's coach. I think he's got a good staff. I mean, time will tell. But I think he's a good coach for the long run, and I think he wants to be there for all the right reasons. I don't think he's going to be a guy using this job as a stepping stone. What do you think?
Well, he can't step. There's no stepping stone. He's already been fired. I mean,
you're right.
But, I mean, there's no. Where's he going?
Yeah, but
if he
does great.
But he's already made. Listen, if he gets fired from the University of South Carolina, he's made $50 million and got fired twice.
Yeah.
Now, so what's the reputation? Yeah. And he was the coach in waiting at Texas.
Mm-hmm.
He left that to take the Florida job, which they're the same job, different places, but it's still big time football. And this is, to me, his last shot at this type of job.
Oh, yeah.
Money's not an issue, so I don't think it's a stepping stone to anything. I mean, if he gets fired tomorrow, he goes with Patrick to Cabo and hangs out. And, I mean, it's just can I come? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think that he is a tireless recruiter. I don't know him that well because he was, when I was coaching, he was kind of in Texas or NFL. I know him now a little bit better. I like how he recruits. It is tireless. And all those camps and all that, he wants to see every kid. And I think he is a tireless recruiter. And I think that's what you got to do these days. I'm not around him enough. Is he really a player's coach? I don't know that. I know Dabo from 1992. Dabo's a player's coach.
Yeah.
The fact of life. And that's when you see Dabo after, and I'm going to catch a lot of heat for this because I'm talking good about Dabo, but Dabo, when you see Dabo after a game, that's who Dabo is.
Mm-hmm.
I like Muschamp's fire. I like everything he's doing. We got to win, and I know we're behind the 8 ball a little bit, but we have to win. We can't win 3 games this year. I mean, that's not good. And we got blown out by Clemson.
Yep.
And lost the bowl game. So I think there's some pressure on Muschamp. I think I like what he's doing. But it doesn't matter who's the coach. In a big-time football or any sport, especially in the SEC, you have to win.
Mm-hmm.
He won some at Florida. Obviously, he didn't win enough. McElwain comes in there with some of his guys, and they're winning the SEC. So I don't get me wrong. I'm in with Muschamp, but we got to win.
I want you to introduce our next guest. You introduced our next guest.
I met Patrick about 8 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't know. I got called to the stadium, and there's this guy that wants to meet me and do some things for the university. And I walk in there and meet Patrick, and he has a song, and
You're a ridiculous song.
I mean, and all of a sudden, we talked 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And since that day, we've been friends.
Buddies,
I mean, you
and
call
now
me.
you're in the
I
bar
call,
business,
yeah.
So
And you had a bar. I came to Camden one night.
Yep.
Hung out, and we've just been friends. And
And
Patrick
I grew up a South Carolina Gamecock fan, lifelong, and I remember I won't say how old I was, but I was younger, and I saw you beat Clemson in Clemson.
Patrick and I have been friends since that meeting at the stadium that day.
Yep.
And Patrick Davis is I mean, it's awesome, man. If he's around, I'm at his shows, and I have.
Yeah.
And if he comes around, he calls me, hey, I'm here.
Yep.
Just like today. He called me yesterday. He's like, you going to be down there? I said, yeah. He's like, I'm going to come by and see you. And he didn't know what was going on.
Yeah,
right.
And
I got roped into this.
You got roped into being on Sports Talk, Patrick Davis.
But man, he texted me the other night and said, hey man, I got this new part of the song, the big old cock song.
Yeah.
And I've been on stage with him, I don't know, 10
times.
10 times.
Yeah.
And
You're gonna sing it tomorrow night?
Tomorrow night I'll be in Charlotte. I'm a little under the weather right now, but I will be in Charlotte tomorrow night at a place called Flight, the Gamecock Club of Charlotte, the Gamecock Club in general, and also My Carolina is putting on a big party up there tomorrow evening. So hopefully tomorrow night will be great, and hopefully Saturday will be a little bit better.
Yeah. Best way to cap off a party is with a win.
Yeah.
No doubt about that. How are things in Nashville with you? How's the career going?
Nashville's been amazing. Life is it's a lot better than I thought it would ever be. So I'll put it like that. I write songs for everybody. I've got a new album coming out this fall myself. I tour with a big 12-piece band called Patrick Davis and his Midnight Choir. It's kind of horns and background singers and all that good stuff. And then I'll be here actually in Columbia at the Music Farm the night before the Clemson Carolina game. I do my annual show there. And I just released I was getting a lot of flack from my buddies here in South Carolina. They were telling me that their kids didn't know who Lou Holtz was.
Oh, no.
And they said, can you make some changes to the big old cock tune? And I was like, yeah, man. And so I wrote a few little verses. I threw Darius in there. I got Steve still made the cut because he's
he's a legend. I told you he's a legend.
Yeah.
Now you're going to Cabo and Dublin Island. I saw on your tour as well.
Yeah, I do. I play all over. Life's like I said, it's a fortunate gig. And I play in Europe a bit. I actually went over and toured about 2 years ago. I did a big tour with Darius over there, and because of that, I can go over and play shows in Europe now. And I've started these events called Songwriters in Paradise, where I take about 15 or 20 of my buddies, called SIP, so SIP Cabo or SIP Hopetown or Napa and these places, and they're in really terrible places like Cabo, Napa.
Now, I ain't got invited to those.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Well,
we're friends, but we're not. We're not on that.
You got to work. You got to work here.
You go back to Union to go hunting. All right. Not exactly the same thing.
I'm here to see Steve today because I just partnered with the Firefly Vodka guys out of Charleston, South Carolina. And we have a thing called Whiskey Jam. It's a whiskey, and only brought it to a few of my buddies, including Steve over here in group therapy.
That will help you get over what's ailing you, I'm sure.
I'm sure. I'm drinking it right now. So you guys, if you want some Whiskey Jam, come to Steve's spot.
Guys, thank you very much. We really appreciate it. Patrick, thanks for coming over.
Thank you so much. Nice to see you guys.
Can you introduce me to Hootie one day?
Yeah. You mean the whole band, or you Darius?
Just Hootie.
Yeah.
I just called him Hootie.
I've even met Hootie.
You have?
Yes, I told you I met him for a meet and greet when he was in
right behind
we
you.
partied
Right behind you, he's on the board. I let Darius sign the board, so he's on the board.
As long as I know Steve Tannehill and Chuck Reedy and Patrick Davis, I'm covered.
Yeah, you're good.
I'm all good.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
We
Go
appreciate
Cubs.
it. Coach, thank you. We'll see you next week.
We're
Okay.
on the move is next, I believe.
Yes, and thanks to Coach Reedy for being with us as well tonight. And we'll be back top of the hour. Recruiting coming up. Mike Morgan, the story on Kent State, and a whole bunch more. We'll be back.
Round 2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
Welcome back, everybody. Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network. We are at group therapy in 5 Points, Steve Tannehill's place. And, of course, this place really hadn't changed a whole lot over the last 30-some-odd years. It's still got that feel to it that it had 35, 40 years ago when people came stumbling in. They still come stumbling in at various times, but the food is terrific. And, of course, you get a chance to see here at Steve Tannehill and others that come through. We had a great time, and looking forward to have Steve and Chuck with us throughout the football season.
They were
giving
good.
us the breakdown of the Gamecocks and Tigers and other things related to football. Now it is time to bring in somebody who's really just a legend in his own mind. It's Morgan on the Move. Mike Morgan joining us here on Sports Talk, brought to you by Play It Again Sports in Columbia. Buy, sell, and trade what you want. And by Founders Federal Credit Union. Check out foundersfcu.com. Learn how they can assist you in all of your financial needs. Mike, how are you?
Phil, Will, Pro, Steve Tannehill, wherever you are, I'm doing well. How about you guys?
We're great. All right. So Ed Cunningham decides that he's not going to do football anymore because of what he's seeing happening with football players. Now, he's a guy that you've worked with in the past, right?
I never worked with Ed. I have met Ed. I know his crew very well. I know the producer and director because I have worked with them. And I always thought that Ed did a good job as an analyst. I don't know exactly how much of went into his head, his thought process when this happened. But I don't know. I mean, on one hand, you could say it's a noble thing. On the other hand, with all due respect to Ed, I don't think it makes a difference to anybody else. I don't think college football is going to change because an analyst is stepping down due to the fact that football is a violent sport. So it was surprising to a lot of folks. And again, I think Ed does a good job, but I don't think we're going to see this become a trend anytime soon where analysts all of a sudden decide they don't like what they see, so they're just going to quit the profession.
Across the SEC, and we'll get to the specifics in a moment, but which of these games, of these intra-conference matchups, kind of has your eye? I mean, we have a lot. We've got the Michigan one. We've got Alabama, Florida State, obviously USC, NC State. Which one has your eye the most and why?
Well, I think without a doubt, the one that's reigned supreme is Alabama, Florida State, even though the loser could very well still be in the national championship hunt and in the national championship game. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case at all, because I think these are clearly two of the top 4 teams in the country. When you break them down, you look at what Alabama has coming back, and they're a machine right now. When you're a machine and you have your quarterback back, that tells me they're certainly one of the favorites. And Florida State, if they actually block for Francois, I mean, last year he was like Rocky taking shots from Apollo Creed and in the first installment of Rocky, and they just didn't block for him. I can't imagine that's not going to improve. They've got Derwin James, who's a stud. They've got all kinds of talent coming back at the skill positions. Yes, they lose Dalvin Cook, but they have good backs. I think that's a matchup that could be a preview of what we see come January, quite frankly. Florida, Michigan is interesting to me for different reasons. I don't think either one of these teams is national championship caliber, but I do think from the Florida standpoint, it's a huge game for Coach McElwain and company. Florida usually opens up with a cupcake. This is obviously not a cupcake. I don't know how many people are left on the roster after all the suspensions, but if they win it, then a lot of people might start saying, okay, Florida's on their way back. And if they lose it, is it the same thing where Felipe Franks looks bad, more bad quarterback play, more ineffective receiving play? Why can't Florida ever get an offense going since Tim Tebow left? That could be the questions that are asked if they don't do something, put some points on the board.
Morgan on the Move. Mike Morgan with us here on Sports Talk. Going back to the Florida thing, reports are they're not finished with suspensions there. Where do you think this thing is all going to lead? What do you foresee being the long-term impact of this investigation on this season?
That is $1 million question. I don't know if I have $1 million answer other than to say that, Callaway is the biggest loss in my estimation. And from what I'm told, there's no understanding of when he's going to be back. This could very well be more than a one-game thing. I suspect most of the players will be back after the Michigan game. And some of the players, quite frankly, will be inconsequential to the outcome of the game. But that is your game breaker, your playmaker. He's not Percy Harvin, but he's the closest thing they have to it. You take him away from an offense that, again, has struggled to score points. And I wonder, a freshman quarterback, first-year starter, you don't have a ton of weapons, you lose your top game breaker. That would spell problems to me, even if you do have a great year on defense.
What would be, obviously the biggest concern for USC this week against NC State is the defensive line. What avenues do you see for them to win this football game on Saturday in Charlotte?
Well, I think they have to win it on defense. It's not to say they don't have talent on offense, but they have, it looks like, Dave Doran's best defense. And let's not forget, this is a guy who's coaching for his job. He had success in Northern Illinois, but there are a lot of coaches that had success in Northern Illinois. That is a very good mid-majors, quote unquote, or group of five school that always seems to win regardless of the coach. NC State, to me, is the equivalent of Arkansas and the SEC. They are the ultimate enigma. You never know what to think of them. Why don't they win more? Chuck Amato was the good cop. That didn't work for long. Then O'Brien was the bad cop. That didn't work for long. They have facilities. They have talent, but yet they perennially underachieve. And they play in, we always talk about the SEC East and West. There's so much more good teams in the West here the last decade. But the same could be said about the ACC. When you look at the division that NC State is in versus the Coastal, it's night and day. So if NC State played in the Coastal, I think they could be looking for an incredible breakout season like a lot of people expect. But I don't know, in that division, they're going to struggle to win 8 games, in my opinion. And if they lose to South Carolina, that's really getting off on the wrong foot.
Yeah. Update from Winston, Wake Forest leading Presbyterian 13-0. So none of us know what's going to happen at Clemson. I mean, we're all just pulling at straws here, so I'll let you pull at a big straw. I mean, is Clemson going to be Clemson with Kelly Bryant as the quarterback? Some people still believe Clemson's going to be among the Final Four playing in the semifinals come late December.
Well, my thoughts on Deshaun Watson. I mean, to me, that's a generational player. And they're going to have other 4-star, 5-star quarterbacks, but I don't think we're going to see another Deshaun Watson for a while. Those don't grow on trees. I know he got my Heisman vote last year, and I think he should have been the winner if they took into account the entire season. Sometimes I think Heisman voters are a little lazy, and they send in their ballot in mid to late November and don't pay attention to what's going on later in the year. But it's not that they just lost. I mean, you lose your top rusher, you lose your top wide receiving threat, you lose your tight end. They got a lot to replace. But that defensive line might be the best in the country. I think their defense could actually be better. Their offense, I don't think, will score as many points. But it's still a 10-win team and a team that can compete. And, of course, they will have Florida State at home later in the year. I think Florida State would be my pick to win the ACC. But I don't expect Clemson to take a major step back, just a minor one.
Mike, enjoy your weekend off, and then you get to work next week, correct?
Yeah, I'll be at Ole Miss in week 2, and I'll be in Athens in week 3. So, obviously, those are 2 programs heading in different directions right now. I can only imagine what the atmosphere is going to be like in the Grove. It's always festive, but the atmosphere in terms of surrounding the program might be a little bit different than what we've seen the last few years.
I was going to say, enjoy the sights and sounds of the Grove, because that might be the only happiness you come across there.
That is true. That is true, guys.
All right, Mike, thank you, man. Talk to you next week.
Sounds good.
All right, Mike Morgan on the move here on the Sports Talk.
You've been to the Grove, right?
That is the one place I have not been to is Ole Miss.
Well, they hide all the beautiful women in America in Oxford, Mississippi on football weekends.
Well, they'd come out of hiding if I was there. So you understand that they would come out of hiding if the corn walks through the Grove. Would not be a problem. Not that I'd be looking or anything.
There are many ridiculous things you've said, but I think that's the most ridiculous.
Back in a moment. All righty, Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, from Group Therapy in 5 Points, and having a great time here just talking with Steve Tannehill, reminiscing about some of, shall we say, his more interesting moments as a student at South Carolina. Let's look ahead to Clemson and Kent State, Saturday at noon. Death Valley, the defending national champions, hitting the field for the first time against the Golden Flashes. We welcome in the voice of Kent State football to Sports Talk, Ty Linder. Ty, how are you?
Great. How are you folks?
We are doing great, and looking forward to having you come to the Palmetto State to meet the Tigers. How are the people around your program and around the school feeling about this opportunity to play Clemson?
Oh, it's definitely a headline grabber. I mean, if we can find a way to make them forget about that team in Columbus for a little bit, that's a great thing. So maybe it's a good thing that they're playing tonight. But no, it's something that I think a lot of people are looking forward to. The freshman class seemed to be all about it last weekend when we had the pep rally. So I think the fans, the community. There's a nice donor group, support staff coming down, and then the players. Just talking to some of the players. They're very anxious to actually get down in some real heat and play an opener against one of the better programs in college football.
You know, it's interesting, Ty, looking at this program's history, and there's a lot of alums that boast the Kent State moniker, and Paul Haynes is in his 5th year, and I know he's not going to be there on Saturday, and we certainly wish the most and best for him and his family as he recovers. But what has been the biggest barrier to getting this program turned around as it has at least fallen on some hard times?
Yeah, I wish I knew the answer to that. Having been around for a student, back in the early 2000s to now, you throw out maybe a 2001 when they went 6-6, 2012 when they were on the doorstep of the Orange Bowl. They just had, if it weren't for bad luck, this program would have none at all. Alan Moff, who is the team's beat writer for the local paper here, put together a timeline of some of the trials and tribulations that KSU football has encountered under Paul Haynes, and that's just one coach, dating back to 2013, and it's mind-boggling from snowed out games to lightning delays to catastrophic injuries to off the field things. It's if it's not one thing, it's another, and then you get into the games and the ball takes this odd bounce. The replay review doesn't go your way. It's mind-boggling at times, but all I guess you can really do is keep plugging away at it and hope that at some point the breaks start going for the boys.
Ty, in looking at this team and listening to what Dabo Sweeney had to say, and of course, he played up a lot of points about the club. I mean, the quarterback is a terrific athlete. The running back as a freshman last year, Dabo pointed out the run he had against Alabama, the first play of the game, and I saw that run. It was a heck of a run. Of course, there's more to that one play, and you were playing Alabama. The point is you've got some athletes. He believes the secondary, in his words, as good as any secondary that they'll see this season. Is all that kind of true from what you know watching these guys?
Well, I would certainly say that if there is a strength, it would be in the defensive secondary without a doubt. In fact, the captain of that group joined us today on Flash Talk, our weekly radio show, and he's just really excited. He's a Georgia native, so to be able to come down there and play within 2 to 3 hours of his home is something he's looking forward to. But I would say without question, the defensive unit, especially in the defensive backfield, it's certainly a strength. And I just hope it stays healthy because Demetrius Monday had an unbelievable 2015 season where he seemingly scored more than some of the guys on the offensive side of the ball. Then he had an injury-riddled campaign a year ago, and I don't think that sat very well with him, and there's just really nothing you can do. He is 100% coming in to the season this year. I think he's excited about that, as we all should be, because he's a guy that really, paid his dues, worked his way up. He's a great young man, a very philosophical young man. So he leads that group. Nick Holly, you talked about it, being at the quarterback spot. It'll be interesting to see, guys, what he can do with a full off season and training camp of preparation. Will we see him most of the time? I think that remains to be seen. And will he have the full offensive playbook at his disposal? I think that's another big question. I know the Golden Flashes have been tweaking some things coming into the season, and will they completely show that in a game like this? I don't know. I think that's what will be interesting to see coming up on Saturday afternoon.
Well, Ty, it's interesting when you look at it. You talk about the secondary wants to test themselves against Clemson, but when you look at a Dexter Lawrence and Christian Wilkins, how does the offensive line feel about what they can do against that vaunted group?
I wish I could ask them that, because that's going to be a challenge. And I think that's going to be the big key for me. Gosh, and I feel like I say this every year around this time. It's just a unit that's got to find a way to get better for the Golden Flashes. They're not going to see a defensive front like this all season long, the KSU that is. And I fully expect there to be 8 or 9 guys in the box pretty much all game long. Until this group, this offensive line for KSU, can prove that it can withstand pressure and completely sustain the protection for its quarterback and running back, you're going to see that. You're going to see 8, 9 guys in the box no matter who you play. So that's a huge, huge concern for me, not only in the opener, but going forward as well when you're playing the likes of Marshall, Louisville, and then a number of the teams in our conference have big defensive lines. So, yeah, that without a doubt is going to be the key to this season for Kent State, is what can the offensive line do? They've got a new offensive line coach. And I would say if there's a secondary key, it would be the wide receivers. Those two groups have got to do something here early and often in this season for Kent State to do anything other than a 3-9.
Well, when you look at the MAC, always a tough and sometimes underappreciated league with some great football talent, great football coaches. Is there a feeling that the coaching staff is using this Clemson game maybe as a measuring stick of what they can do when they enter another tough MAC season?
I think that's a fair question, and I would say that while you may not, it's tough because you're already going to be up against it. We know that you're going into a hostile environment, and they know that they're going to have to play probably a perfect game to be in the game. I mean, that's just the facts of it. That's how you have to approach it. With that said, I don't know that a game like this gives you a true barometer, nor do I know if next week when Kent State schedules down a bit and faces Howard. I think, my sideline analyst, Jacob Pavlak, had a great point when he said week 3, when you play Marshall, that's really your first real barometer. That week 3 on the road, a team that has a lot of characteristics of a MAC team, that's when you might really know if you've taken that next step. Now, that's not to say that if I see Nick Holly bust an 80-yard run on Saturday, that's not going to get us really excited about what he could do then against other opponents, just as if we get shut out. Then I won't say, well, you know what, we're facing a team that's got a tremendous defense, athletes all over the place, and they just won the national championship last year. Let's not get too down. So I think it's going to be one of those games, win, lose, or draw, that you're going to file away and then move on.
And we're talking to Ty Linder, the play-by-play voice of the Kent State Golden Flashes. They take on Clemson Saturday at high noon in Tiger Town. That kickoff early, is it something you think is good for the players coming down from Ohio, or maybe it's a negative?
I think this is a group that's, like I said, it's been in a situation where it made a trip to New York and got snowed out, was stuck in a hotel for 3 days. It also went to Illinois the very next year and got lightninged out to the very next day. The team got split up into 2 hotels. They're a team that wants to know what time they play, when to be there, and they'll be just tickled that if they get a chance to play at that time. The one thing I will be keeping my eye out, guys, is this was a very, I would say, a cool training camp season. So they didn't have to deal with heat during 2 days. They'll have to deal with heat and humidity on Saturday. How will they respond?
No, they still hadn't lined up in front of 80,000. Well, certainly you want to always have success. Any recruit is.
Continuing with Sports Talk on a very busy Thursday night. We got some time for some calls now. If you'd like to join in and comment on anything you've heard tonight, share your prediction for the weekend. Of course, the South Carolina-NC State game is the one that is worth making a pick on unless you're picking against the spread. On our website, SportsTalkSC.com, the question is who wins Saturday? 68% of over 360 people say USC is going to win the game on Saturday, so we shall see if they are right. And that is not picking against the spread. That's just picking a winner between those two. Got some news out of the NFL on a former Tiger.
Update also on Wake Forest and Presbyterian. Wake Forest with a 23-0 lead. One interesting SEC note, apparently Florida A&M was playing Arkansas. They are one of the first teams to be penalized for wearing illegal jerseys because they do not have contrasting numbers with their team color. And the penalty for that, you lose a timeout each half.
Wow.
So there you go. So they're basically we now have official fashion police.
What about Nuke Hopkins?
Nuke Hopkins is going to get a new deal, Corn. 5 years, $81 million, nearly $49 million guaranteed. That is according to the NFL Network. He basically now is the top earner amongst wide receivers in the history of the National Football League, surpassing the guaranteed money given to both Julio Jones and Demaryius Thomas. They both had $35 million guaranteed. So his agent and he will get themselves some big bucks on payday.
Not bad. Want to give you a high school football report by Farm Bureau Insurance. With new auto insurance rates from Farm Bureau Insurance, you could be saving a whole lot of money. Even if you've received a quote before, rates are now more competitive than ever. Get a no-obligation quote today at faverates.com. That's F-A-V-E, rates.com. High school football last night, 3 games in the state. Blackville-Hilda beat Great Falls 46-14. Keenan loses to Chester 50-7. And Buford, a 38-20 winner last night over Louisville. Now, you've got a lot of high school football being played tonight. Games were moved up because of the threat of rain, a threat that has come true because it's been raining out there. And there'll still be some games, of course, tomorrow night. Checking a few games where we can bring you some scores from people who are tweeting out scores from across the states. And it is Lamar leading Darlington 20-0. It is Chapin on top of Irmo 15-6. And I'm just looking to see if I see any other scores that jump up at me. York has a 7-0 lead on Union County. So we're off and running with the high school weekend. NFL action, let me tell you, I know you're dying for this. Green Bay is leading the Rams 7-0
in the most meaningless of the preseason games
Lambeau
that there are.
Field. All right. 800-956-7266. A couple of other things I want to mention. USC Clemson, the annual athletic competition begins tomorrow. First competition of the new school year, USC and Clemson men's soccer play up at Clemson at Riggs Field, 7:30. Both teams are 2-0.
I should go up there for that a little bit early in advance of the football game.
You really should. You really should. Hey, listen, when these teams get together in anything,
you throw out the records.
You throw out whatever you want to. Throw out the baby with the bathwater.
Now, I wonder if Jarmart has himself a little Clemson or South Carolina soccer scarf.
That's a good question. I know he has a scarf, but it has nothing to do with soccer.
Whoa, like a boa? Like a boa?
Well, it's just his fashion style scarves, high heels, things like that.
Do you know
what I'm talking about?
Do you have an ascot is what you're talking about?
I don't know what you call it.
The only scarf I own is the University of Minnesota scarf, and that was out of necessity because I didn't know you needed those when I moved up to Minnesota.
That speaks more to that Georgia education of yours.
It's fine education down there. I learned about football, some more football, and that Georgia football is the only football.
Is that a fact?
We shall see about that.
Is that a fact?
All right, let me also tell you that Florida State looks like Matthew Thomas is going to be back in time for the Alabama game. Missed the last 3 weeks of camp for what was described as an academic-related issue impacting his eligibility, but miracles of miracles, the starting linebacker apparently has had that situation resolved in time to play for the against Alabama. And the news coming out of Gainesville is there could be more suspensions regarding that situation in Florida. Have you been following the situation at Auburn with the softball team?
I have not.
This is the most disgusting thing I've ever heard. Well, of course, number one.
I think I've heard a little bit about it. Yeah.
Well, Auburn had a very good softball team, right?
Yes.
Did they win the national championship or play
They
for?
were close. They were close.
Well, the head coach and his son, who was his assistant coach, allegedly the son was just to be playing with you, fooling around with some of the players.
That's not good.
And the head coach and the father, the head coach, allegedly knew about it. Did nothing about it. Now some of the girls are, of course, upset. Complaining about it.
Well, it was weird. I remember seeing him saying he stepped down, and people were saying, "Oh, this is big in SEC softball circles," and now a lot of this is starting to filter out.
But the question is, this goes back to the athletic director at Auburn, and does this cost him his job?
Title IX issue,
There's
definitely.
talk about his job being in jeopardy because
that's still Jay Jacobs up there?
That is.
That's. I mean, and he's a guy who has run. I don't want to say it's been squeaky clean, but you haven't really heard anything about them in any of these types of issues, and that's something that's saying something nowadays. And from that particular perspective, it's not something you ever want to be involved in, but that could topple even the greatest of athletic directors if you have one of those on your ledger.
All right, South Carolina, of course, heading to Charlotte. They'll be leaving tomorrow. They'll be there overnight, of course. You heard Patrick Davis here is going to be performing, and then the Gamecocks will be performing on Saturday. And this is, Charlotte is prime recruiting territory for South Carolina and for NC State. It's a great location with a lot of schools and a lot of talent. Earlier this week at his press conference, Muschamp talked about going to Charlotte and what that means from a recruiting standpoint.
Well, certainly you want to always have success. I mean, that's obvious. But I don't think that any recruit is going to make a decision based on one game. And if they are, we probably don't want them. But I'm always open to Charlotte, Atlanta. Anytime we can, those are two areas we need to recruit well in. We got great players in our state. They're not going to be numbers wise enough each year to fulfill our roster. So anytime we can have a kickoff situation in those, and Coach Tanner knows how I feel about it, and to have those opportunities to go get exposure in those areas are very important for us.
Are there any offensive linemen aside from the starting five that you want to see in game action?
Certainly, I think Dennis Daly's a guy that's played extremely well. As he needs to be more consistent. DJ Park is a guy that is very versatile, can play across the board at different spots, but certainly can. So Darius Hutchinson's had the last 10 days of camp has been the guy that we recruited, and a guy that we're obviously excited about. Chandler Farrell's certainly capable of going in and playing extremely well for us. Blake Camper's done a nice job. So, we got guys that we have confidence in and being able to put in the game and being effective.
Will you make a concerted effort to get any of those guys in?
Possibly. We're still talking in terms of rotation and things. We haven't been dead set on the depth chart. Did you give him the garnet copy or the black copy?
Whatever one you get.
Okay. I don't know which one you got, so I can't comment. We gave one, though. Some of these schools aren't giving out depth charts, are they? Rosters. Really? I didn't know that. He's something.
I love that little ditty between the reporters and them talking about how Michigan is such like the Gestapo now.
It's so cute. It's just so cute. Speaking of recruiting in the Charlotte area for this game, both teams are allowed to invite 25 recruits to the game. And this defensive end that USC just offered, Joe Bulletapelli, 6'4", 244 out of Wake Forest, North Carolina. He's going to be there. He was invited by both teams. Now, USC offered him based on his senior film, which is kind of unusual because offers typically come off your junior film and off your summer camp. He did not attend summer camp at USC. Lance Thompson watched his first couple of games and really liked him, and they offered him. North Carolina, Georgia, NC State, Wake, Louisville, Michigan State, Tennessee, Miami, Arkansas, some other offers. He's very interested in South Carolina, never been there before. Plans to get in for a game at some point this season. He's already had 4 sacks this year.
I can tell you there's some opportunities on that D-line that he can possibly play in very, very much right away, especially next year.
Defensive back Patrick Surtain Jr. of Plantation, Florida, named his top 6 last night. Clemson, LSU, Alabama, Ohio State, Florida, Florida State. 2019 defensive lineman Tyshik Galloway of Belton Honeypath. He plans to attend Clemson's game Saturday against Kent State. He said he does not have any other visits planned. He will go to Georgia State for a game. Defensive back Chris Pam of Blythewood and Georgia Military Junior College says he's hearing from Florida State, Texas San Antonio, Louisiana Lafayette, and Tulane. We'll be right back. All right, it's Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. On a Thursday night, reminder that tomorrow night, high school football scoreboards for you across the state of South Carolina. There's high school football tonight. And, again, big games tomorrow, including that showdown between number 1 and number 2, Fort Dorchester, against Dutch Fork. That should be a whale of a football game.
You have to carry on Joyner. Got to love it.
Well, and all those kids at Dutch Fork. Want to give you another high school football report brought to you by Farm Bureau Insurance. With new auto insurance rates from Farm Bureau, you could be saving a whole lot of money, even if you received a quote before. Rates are now more competitive than ever. You can get a no-obligation quote today at faverates.com. That's F-A-V-E rates.com. All right, players of the week for last week is chosen by the High School Sports Report. In 5A, it's quarterback Dustin Noller from Northwestern, 334 yards, 3 touchdowns. 4A player of the week, Darion Kendrick of South Point. I guess he had a quarterback rating of perfect, 18 of 18, 324 yards, 4 touchdowns, and he rushed for 1 as well. He'll go to Clemson to be a wide receiver. 3A player of the week is Colton Bailey, quarterback from Chapman, and led an offense that had over 500 yards. He passed for 344.
It's not bad.
2A player of the week, Hunter Helms of Gray Collegiate. He's a quarterback, and he had 261 yards and 3 touchdowns passing. The 1A player of the week, Corey Fields of Baptist Hill, quarterback, 19 of 24, 375, and 5 touchdowns, and a 75-yard run. Skeeza player of the week, Lance Brownlee, quarterback, defensive back from Dorchester. Played well on both sides, 244 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, rushed for 56 yards and a score. And its safety had 6 tackles and a pick. Congratulations, players of the week selected by the High School Sports Report.
So I have the Clemson schedule in front of me, and since we're already forecasting the demise of Kelly Bryant.
By the way, something smells really good.
I know,
here.
right?
What is that?
Someone's got something going with
like
the garlic.
Or something?
Yeah. So I have it in front of me.
Yeah.
We're already forecasting that Kelly Bryant's not going to start the entire year, it seems.
Well, I'm waiting to see. I'm a wait and see guy.
Where on this do you think?
Well, if he loses the job, it's going to be week 2 against Auburn.
That soon?
Oh, yeah.
Get out of here. Dabo's got that short a leash on him?
Yeah.
Get out.
I mean, I think Dabo wants to beat Auburn, and if he struggles, he'll go to Hunter Johnson, and then we'll see what happens from there. If he plays extremely well and they beat Auburn, he'll be the quarterback when they go to Louisville.
I think that this October 28th, that's the line of demarcation for me, because after that you go to NC State, your home Florida State, you have the home game against the Citadel, and then you have the big showdown here in Columbia.
I mean, it all depends on how well he plays. I mean, you think they're going to stick with him through thick and thin, and if they start losing games, they're going to just hang with him until that deep in the season?
I don't know if you're going to throw a guy who's a green guy who's never seen any field action other than, what happened against Kent State. If you throw that guy out there green against Louisville on the road, I don't know if you do anybody any good by doing that.
Let's give you some final thoughts from the Clemson camp about this game against Kent State on Saturday at Death Valley. Christian Wilkins, the big defensive tackle, will spearhead the Tigers up front, along with Dexter Lawrence and those other guys. And, they had a long, hard camp, and he said this week, he and the rest of his defensive mates, they're just ready to play a game.
The first game is always really exciting, always more emotion than that first game of the year. Just really looking forward and excited to, what this team is going to be, what our identity is going to be. And, it all starts on Saturday. We're going to put in the work in it every day this week. We've had a good summer, had a good camp. And, now we, like you said, get to go hit somebody else other than each other. So that'll be fun for sure.
Being on the opposite side of the ball, you've been able to notice the growing confidence of Kelly Bryant. Do you have any doubts this guy's ready to lead the other units?
No doubts in my mind at all. I'm actually really excited to see what Kelly can do. He's my quarterback. He's him and Tucker are the guys I came in with. They're that 2015 class. And so I'm really excited to see what Kelly's going to do. I have all full faith in Kelly that he can get the job done, and really excited that he's our starter. And I think that if Clemson Nation really gets behind Kelly or whoever the quarterback is throughout the course of the season, then they're going to do a great job. That's my challenge to Clemson Nation and everybody else too. Really just to support and be that same love that number 4 got last year and the years before, that, I know it's going to have to be earned, but, definitely Tiger Nation should give that same love and respect to whoever our starting quarterback is, because whoever it is going to be able to get the job done.
Dabo said there was a noticeable change in confidence over this last month.
Oh, yeah, I've definitely seen it. Just Kelly making tighter throws, throwing it in maybe certain windows here and there, just really seeming really calm and cool at all times, not letting anything be too big, be too big or too challenging for him. He's just seemed real calm and cool, and there's a reason he's a starter and he's our leader now on offense.
What technical areas of the game do you feel like you improved from last year to this year that will be able to show out this time?
Really just, the biggest thing I improved on in my game is just my knowledge. I know a lot more about offenses now, because my first year here, it was really just learning the plays was like the biggest learning curve. And, everything was brand new to me. The last year, things kind of slowed down. Now, even this year, it slowed down a lot more for me. I can understand what offenses are trying to do, schemes, things like that. And really, that's just going to help me, to perform, to be a good defensive player. You got to know offense. So that's going to be, a big thing for me this year is really picking up on what the offenses are trying to do.
Christian Wilkins looking to have a big year. This is his money year, of course, being a junior, eyeing the draft next year, chance for him to lay claim to a first-round draft spot next year. But first things first, he's got to help his defense maintain the level of play that they have had the last couple of years. And Brent Venables feels like this defense can be as good as anything that he has had at Clemson over the last couple of years.
It sits on that linebacking unit, having to replace Boulware. You get Trey Lamar up there in the middle, Dorian O'Daniel, and you have a lot of great players who have contributed. I mean, this is not the situation that you're dealing with at South Carolina, where you have a bunch of seniors and then you have Green behind it. You've got guys who have played ancillary roles for your football team who are now stepping into leadership roles. I feel a lot more comfortable about that than I do about the inverse.
All right, so let's update Presbyterian and Wake Forest. I mean, I'm not expecting any sort of a miraculous win by PC here. It'd be nice to see them be a little bit competitive. Last time we checked, they were down 23-0.
23-0, and I have it
29-0.
29.
Still 29-0. Yeah. Well, listen, Wake Forest, a bowl team last year, and PC being PC. I know they were hoping to go there and make a respectable showing, and that's tough. Then they got to go to the Citadel next week as we look at the schedule coming up this Saturday for everybody. We should also try to get a score on Tusculum and North Greenville if you can. But, of course, we got Furman at Wofford. We've got Newberry at the Citadel. Charleston Southern going down to Mississippi State. I said that at the beginning. We got Benedict at home against Livingston. East Tennessee State at Limestone. Coastal Carolina at home against UMass. UMass is a favorite there. South Carolina State going to Southern. See if the Bulldogs can get off to a good start down in Baton Rouge and win that classic game. And
wondering if they've been ravaged by Tropical Storm Harvey at all.
Good question. And, of course, South Carolina, NC State, Clemson, and Kent State. So tomorrow night on Sports Talk, you know what Friday is? We let our hair down. We relax. We chill. Lee Sterling returns for his Sterling picks. We have the football filibuster with Governor Hodges and Attorney General Wilson. I know his first name, Alan Wilson. Of course, the Governor Beasley's on assignment somewhere out in the world. We don't know where he is. He took his trophy and left. So Governor Hodges will have to deal with Attorney General Alan Wilson tomorrow night. And, of course, we'll talk a lot more about the games coming up this weekend. David Shelton will be with us to talk about the high schools. We'll have the look at Darlington. I'll be at Darlington tomorrow.
You're going to bring us back some Bojangles now.
No, Bojangles will not make the trip.
North Greenville, Tusculum, 14-all.
Oh, good ball game up there in Tigerville.
Look at that.
That'll do it. Thanks to Steve Tannehill and Group Therapy, and to Chuck Reedy and everybody else. Thank you, Pro and Jarmart, and you,
Willie
WP. We'll see you tomorrow.